It began not with a bang, but with silence. The kind of silence that stretches across years, across cells, across secrets no one wants to unearth. It began in a small coastal prison called Dunebrook Correctional Facility in New Zealand, a place few had heard of and even fewer returned from. Welcome to Family Crime Chronicles, your ultimate destination for chilling true crime stories. We uncover the darkest corners of real-life mysteries, twisted affairs. Please comment where you're watching us from, and subscribe for new episode of True Crime Stories. Dr. Elijah Ward had never expected to work at Dunebrook. He was 32, newly appointed to a state medical rotation, assigned to monitor prisoners on death row. Detached and disciplined, Elijah was the sort of man who listened more than he spoke. His colleagues knew him as quiet, measured, deeply intelligent, but always slightly removed, as if part of him lived somewhere else. And then he met Layla Quinn. She was 24. Convicted of poisoning her father, a powerful and controversial land developer who had made enemies among locals, family, and politicians alike. But the trial had been swift, too swift. No outburst from Layla, no defense, no pleas, just a guilty verdict and a death sentence. But nothing, not even death row, was as it seemed. Layla Quinn was unlike any inmate Elijah had ever encountered. Pale, thin, and withdrawn, she barely spoke. She complied with orders, ate what little she was served, and rarely acknowledged the guards. Her cell was neat, her demeanor eerily calm. Elijah began his routine checkups on her with clinical distance, blood pressure, reflexes, vision, a quiet series of assessments. But over time, he noticed something, not in her body, but in her eyes. A vacancy that wasn't just grief. It was the absence of self-preservation. A woman who had accepted not just her sentence, but something darker, something she believed she deserved. And then one night, she broke her silence. "I didn't do it," she said softly, as Elijah scribbled notes on her chart. He paused. "What did you say?" She met his gaze, eyes hollow. "But I deserved to be punished anyway." He couldn't shake that line. That statement stayed with him long after he left her cell. Elijah had seen delusion. He'd seen denial. But this was neither. It was as though Layla was carrying someone else's sin. Driven by a gnawing feeling he couldn't explain, he reviewed her toxicology report. The poison used on her father, Graham Quinn, was a rare botanical toxin extracted from a root native to South America, but sometimes trafficked through underground herbal markets in New Zealand. It wasn't something an amateur could dose correctly. And most telling of all, no trace of it was found anywhere on the Quinn estate. He called an old friend from medical school, now a pharmacologist in Wellington. Could this have been used accidentally? Elijah asked. "No," his friend said firmly. "That dosage, that method, it was deliberate, clean, professional." Elijah leaned back in his chair. Who had planned this so carefully? And why would Layla confess to something so precise, so professional, when she had no medical background? He felt the question settling deep in his gut. Was Layla covering for someone? Digging further, Elijah requested access to Layla's trial transcripts. They were thin. No character witnesses. No forensic experts brought in by the defense. Just a taped confession and a written statement saying she would not contest the charges. Why? Why would a woman with everything to lose simply give up? He drove to the Quinn family estate, which had been shuttered and fenced since the trial. There he met Mrs. Anders, an elderly maid who had worked there for 3 decades. Layla loved her father, she said quietly. But her brother, Mark, oh, he hated the man. Elijah blinked. She had a brother? Mrs. Anders nodded. Left out of the trial. But there was tension, a lot of it. Mr. Quinn changed shortly before his death. Only Layla was written out. Mark got everything. Elijah stood there for a long time. The wind whistled through the trees. Back at the prison, he looked Layla straight in the eyes. "Was it you?" he asked gently. "Or were you protecting someone?" Tears welled up in her eyes. She didn't speak, but she cried. Elijah knew he was breaching protocol, but he couldn't stop. He began filing informal inquiries. When they were denied, he dug deeper, searched through property records, surveillance footage, pharmacy logs. It took weeks, and then he found it. A payment made from Mark Quinn to a known herbalist with ties to the black market, dated exactly 2 days before Graham Quinn's death. It was enough. Elijah contacted the New Zealand Innocence Project and shared everything. They took the case immediately. A rare emergency hearing was held. The media buzzed. Protesters gathered outside. Layla arrived in handcuffs, but she looked different now. Resigned, but not broken. Elijah testified. Calm, clear. He laid out every piece of evidence. The toxicology mismatch, the payment records, the interviews, the inconsistencies. Then Layla was asked to speak. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I didn't kill my father," she said, "but I knew who did. And if one of us had to go down, I'd rather it be me than him." A long silence followed. The judge ordered an immediate investigation into Mark Quinn, who was arrested within 24 hours. Layla was exonerated. Her release was quiet. No headlines. No apologies. Just a car waiting outside the prison gate. Elijah was there, not as a doctor, not as a savior, just as someone who had listened. He resigned from the prison shortly after. Said he was burned out. That was only partly true. Months passed. Then a letter arrived at his small flat in Wellington. No return address. Just a single sentence on the page. "Thank you for seeing me before anyone else did." He smiled. A year later, they met again, at a quiet seaside cafe in Tauranga. There were no embraces, no confessions. Just 2 cups of coffee and 2 people who had finally learned how to live outside silence. Justice doesn't always come with gavel bangs and sirens. Sometimes it comes in the form of a whisper, of a doctor who chose to listen, and a woman who, despite everything, chose to protect someone else. Elijah didn't save Layla. He believed her, and that belief gave her the courage to save herself, based on real events. Names and details changed for privacy. Movie camera like Comet, and subscribe to hear more true stories that remind us of the quiet power of seeing someone fully. Please don't forget to like this story if it kept you hooked. Comment your thoughts. Was it love, power, or something else? Subscribe and turn on notifications for more real and emotional stories.